Hi, my name is Vanessa Lewis, and I'm going to be talking about the plots and subplots of Uncut Gems, a film directed by Martin Scorsese. So, Uncut Gems opens in Ethiopia, where miners discover a very rare black opal, and cuts from Ethiopia to New York, where we meet Howard Ratner, a New York jeweler who struggles with a gambling addiction. When we first meet Howard, he's being hassled by a couple of guys working for his brother-in-law, Arno. The guys push Howard for the $100,000 that Howard owes Arno from an old loan. From there, we meet Julia, Howard's younger girlfriend and employee, who's lounging in the apartment when Howard walks in pissed about some family drama that he has going on, and they end up getting into a screaming match about Howard's stress over his current situation. Later on, Howard gets a call from one of his associates who says that Kevin Garnett is interested in some of Howard's jewelry. Once he gets to the shop, Kevin Garnett is interested in Howard's rare black opal and pushes Howard to lend it to him as a good luck charm for a big upcoming game that he has that night. Howard is super reluctant because it took him a lot to come by the opal. So in exchange, Kevin Garnett offers one of his championship rings as a loan. As soon as Kevin Garnett leaves, Howard pawns off the championship ring and places a bet that Garnett will do extremely well at his next game, and Howard ends up winning $600,000. The next night at his daughter's play, Howard is ambushed by Arno's goons who strip him naked and reveal that Arno stopped Howard's bet on the game because it was made with money that wasn't his, aka the money that he owes Arno. So he ends up naked and locked in a trunk and has to call his soon-to-be ex-wife, who, keep in mind, is still watching his daughter's play, for help. Later on, Howard goes to a party to find Julia doing coke in a bathroom with The Weeknd. Drunk and frustrated, he jumps to some conclusions and ends up fighting with Julia, ultimately kicking her out of the apartment he pays for her to stay in. Later on in the movie, before an upcoming high-profile jewelry auction, Kevin Garnett returns the black opal and lowballs Howard, offering him $175,000 for the opal, and Howard refuses based on his original appraisal estimate of $100 million. So leading up to the auction, Howard devises a plan with his father-in-law to get him to bid higher on the opal in order to gain more interest from Kevin Garnett. The plan, of course, ends up backfiring, and Gooey, his father-in-law, ends up accidentally winning the opal for $100,000. On his way home from the auction, Howard is battered by Arno and his boys again, and he goes back to his shop sobbing where Julia is waiting to comfort him. Kevin Garnett, fed up with Howard's games, ends up buying the gem for $165,000, which is way more than enough to pay Arno back. But, of course, Howard immediately bets the money on Garnett's team, the Celtics, winning the game again. Of course, believing in luck and the gem having special powers. So he sends Julia to a casino with $165,000 to place the bet for him, knowing that Arno and the guys are going to be back for him. So, when they do show up pissed, they harass Howard for the money only to find out about Julia's mission. And when they turn to go catch her, Howard traps him in between his shop's security doors until the game is over. So meanwhile, at the casino, Julia's placing the $165,000 bet. And the Celtics win the game, and Howard is ecstatic. He wins $1.2 million, which, again, of course, is like way more than enough to pay Arno back. So he lets the guys out because he's ecstatic. He has all the money to pay him back. And then one of the guys is just mad about the whole situation, turns around and shoots Howard dead. When Arno starts freaking out and he tries to stop him, he turns around and Arno gets shot. And then the two goon guys start to raid the store and the police are called. And Julia leaves the casino with Howard's $1.2 million. So, going into the subplots of the film, the biggest ones we see are Howard's personal relationships that he has outside of his gambling and how they're affected by his greed. We see him struggle to be a supportive dad because he's always distracted by his money, his bets, his debts. Here, his wife had asked Howard to her in, and he ended up laying in bed with her, just watching the Celtics game, seeing if he was going to win more money. And again, we saw him get pulled from his daughter's play in order to get beaten up over the $100,000 that he had owed his brother-in-law. And the lack of his connection with his family, I'm sure, is what ultimately pushed his wife away. And of course, he filled that hole that he was digging with his family with Julia, who works as sort of a symbol for the things that money can buy. I think that the cause and effect relationship here is that the more time Howard invests into his gambling, the less time he has for his family. And when his wife felt that he was being absent, she began to pull away from Howard and ask for a divorce. And that was when we kind of started to see things, his gambling addiction become more prevalent. So when he felt his wife slipping away from his life, Howard started gambling large amounts of money and spending more time with Julia to fill the void that I'm sure that he felt. And really, I think that the film showcases how society praises money and status over the things that money can't buy, and how greed is kind of a bottomless hole. And I think that the only way that Howard wouldn't have died in the end is if he invested more time and energy into his home life. I low-key think that he was too far gone when the film started, because in the first 10 or 15 minutes, he was already $100,000 in debt. And so the movie started with a money-hungry Howard and ended with a money-hungry Howard. And I think that his greed, again, snowballed along with the decline of his marriage. And I think that the only way he would have really survived in the end is if he hadn't gambled away everything that he was in debt with. But I don't really think that that was possible with, how strong his addiction was. And I also don't think that you can fight an addiction without emotional support, which he wasn't willing to have. So I don't really think that the film would have gone anywhere else. And I kind of think that that was the point, which I appreciated from the director. And yeah, that's it. That was Uncut Gems.